All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us on this stream. I'm going to take just a couple minutes here, let everyone get connected to us, make sure everyone's has good quality. My name is Nate Sparks. I'm the chair for the Central Indiana section of the Audio Engineering Society. We have a great program tonight. George Massenburg's here, and we're going to be talking immersive mixing, Atmos and Beyond. Couple things, just we'll shoot to a Q&A later in this program and actually throughout the program, so fill out anything there in the chat room over to the right, or if you're on a mobile device, you'll actually need to hit live chat to type into it. Check us out at centralindianaaes.org, and make sure you also hit the subscribe button and the like button on this video. I think that's all I had for this opening. I think we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Brett Leonard to introduce George and get us kicked off tonight. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Again, like Nate said, thanks for everyone joining us this evening. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing a friend and mentor of mine, somebody I met up at McGill and studied with. I don't think I need to do much of an intro. I'm pretty sure everyone on the stream knows him from his work with incredible artists like Bonnie Raitt, Linda Ronstadt, Earth, Wind, and Fire, or his work with the Parametric Equalizer, MDW, the list goes on and on. But I think what we're going to see tonight is something that I've known for a while, which is George always has his finger on the pulse of what's coming up in technology and in the audio industry. He's an early adopter, and I think we're going to get a lot of great information tonight. So with no further ado, George Massenburg.
Brett, thank you so much. It's great to see you. And
thank you for joining us.
It's great to join the Central Indiana AES, if I've got that right. Yeah. And I normally when I'm giving, normally when I'm giving live presentations, I ask that if there are any questions that come up, that send a chat in, and Brett will pick it up. And if there's something that needs explanation, that begs for more explanation, we'll just take a second. If it's something that we could move until later, we'll do that. But I want to talk about entering into this new orbit of immersive mixing, and what to expect, what we might think about. But I'd like to, if I could go to my presentation, gentlemen, I'd like to call this a new opportunity for authenticity, in part because everything that I've done that has been successful has a whiff of authenticity. And I think it's worth chatting about. But first, I'd like to talk about a history of multi-channel delivery. And in 1881, and some of you probably noted that during experiments in transmitting sound from the Paris Opera, that if two telephones on stage were connected to two receivers held to someone's ears, it was possible for them to follow the movement of singers on stage. It was noted that primitive telephones, long before electronic amplification, so enfeebled the sound that listeners found the quality of reception unrewarding and let their subscriptions lapse. So began multi-channel's first failure. More recently, the Met Live, originally transmitted to movie theaters, has been a resounding success and profitable success. It's now streamed in HD to the Met website. Going back to 1881, it was noted during experiments in transmitting sound that there was possible. I don't know how that happened. Sorry, quick prep. The early 70s saw the introduction of quadraphonic sound. Quadraphonic sound was not a commercial success, partly because of the competing and somewhat incompatible 4-channel record formats. CBS, JVC, Dynaco, and others all had systems. Generally poor quality, even when played as intended on the correct equipment of the released music, eventually faded out in the late 70s. The 5.1 format dates back to 1976 when Dolby Labs modified the track usage of 6 analog magnetic soundtracks on Tadeo 70mm film sound prints. Since it did not use split surrounds, it was not really 5.1. In 1979, Dolby first used split surrounds with Apocalypse Now with 70mm film using optical soundtracks. Instead of the 5 screen channels and 1 surround channel of the Tadeo format, Dolby's stereo 70mm 6-track provided 3 in the front, 2 high-pass surround channels, and a low-frequency surround channel monophonically blended with the 2 surround channels. Steven Spielberg selected DTS Surround Digital for Jurassic Park in 1993. DTS Surround started out as a 5.1 channel digital system which encoded the audio as 5 primary full-range channels plus a special low-frequency LFI effects channel. I heard Jurassic Park at Skywalker Sound, and you could hear the future. It was an amazing mix and deserving of the Oscar. In 1997, DTS released that format, the DTS Music Disc or DTS Audio CD, which was a digital audio compact disc that contained music in one of various possible surround sound configurations, notably 5.1, at just under a 10 megabit per second rate, or that rate that the CDs at the time could tolerate. It failed, despite huge investment, it failed to gain an audience. Around 2000, 2 more technologies were unleashed on the market, DVD audio and the Sony SACD, leading to a format war from which neither really recovered. The SACD format has survived with a vanishingly small niche, classical music. Brings us to immersive. Immersive refers to that technology which attempts to channel, stimulate, augment reality by means of digital representations, creating a feeling of the senses being surrounded by stimuli, visual, auditory, haptic, and multimodal, and thereby creating a sense of immersion. Since about 2010, artists were eager to explore new media. By the end of the decade, they found innovative and immersive ways to curate, present, showcase their art to millions in a way that's acceptable to the artist's output and adaptable to a world distribution. That's important, the audience. Since about 2010, sorry, glitch. Who did these slides? Nearly all of us grew up in an immersive world, a world that touches all of our senses. And as our colleague, Dr. Susan Rogers, says, sound is a special form of touch. The first Dolby Atmos installation was in the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles for the Wave in June 2012. Dolby Atmos, by default, has a 10-channel 7.1.2 bed for the main mix, including music, ambient stems, center dialogue, leaving 118 tracks for objects. Although mixing for production of music in 7.1.4 with 4 height channels is more often encountered. And by the way, for modern film production, the number of stems, the number of channels can reach all the way to dozens, scores of channels and stems. We'll come back to that. Sony's 360 Reality Audio was the first widely demonstrated system at Consumer Electronics Show in 2019. It's an object-based immersive audio system, not unlike Dolby Atmos or DTS-X. Its target application is for music rather than film soundtracks, and of course focuses on being played on headphones. It's very important because the world listens on headphones and earbuds.
Real quick, George, I'm wondering if you can break down what an object is. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with channel-based systems.
It's a good time to talk about objects, and thanks, Brett. So an object is a way to represent a position in your mix environment, a position, whatever that may be, in your mix environment, as an object rather than as a channel. As the workflow proceeds through distribution channels, another use of the word channel, you might find a playback system with vastly different speaker positions. And the Dolby concept is to put and also the Sony 360 reality audio concept, is to put these objects in a physically represented space with physical positions. And then to have a renderer later on in the workflow, render these objects into real positions depending on where your speakers are. So for movie theaters, it's dramatically different for home than home playback. As for instance, is that clear enough, Brett? Does that make sense?
I think that's good. That idea for people coming from a channel-based world, I think that idea that something can float around and be positioned dynamically is a really new concept.
And to make it flexible, and flexibly enough in the mixing, where you can put something where you hope it'll turn out in the real playback, no matter how many speakers you have, and more importantly, where they are. Because these systems in theaters and other venues are set up to accurately, or so it is said, accurately map the position of speakers so that the objects fall in the right place.
Great.
So that's a good question. So getting started. Perfect. Getting started in monitoring or mixing 712 channel immersive audio, which is the standard. We don't like it. We'll come back to that. You need some tools. Many of them have become well known to this audience, and I'd prefer not to spend too much time on the tools right now, but I'll mention a few. Generally speaking, there are two production and delivery paths. Generally speaking, multi-channel and binaural, and both have wide variations. You can, for instance, derive binaural from a multi-channel production, and you can monitor binaural from a multi-channel mix with a good set of headphones. There are a bunch of multi-channel tools, but primary are the Dolby Atmos renderer, Sony 360 reality audio, MPH authoring, and any number of immersive tools that can do good rendering, like Spat Revolution or Exponential Audio Stratus 3D. There are also spatializer tools, basic tools, like Facebook 360 or Unity, Valve's Stream Audio, Oculus Native Spatializer, and most recently, the Apple iPod head tracking system. And lots of effects plugins. I don't even really want to go into it, but there are dozens. So, what's next? How do we as producers and engineers get into this? It's not clear that traditional labels are at all interested, this should not surprise us, interested in investing in our re-education as immersive listeners. And those that aren't providing budgets to support experiment and development. In many ways, we're on our own with some basic questions to ask. What's the delivery channel? Number one, what's the delivery channel? Right up there with who are the audiences? What are our strengths as artists, songwriters, producers, engineers, musicians, content creators? What are our strengths? How do we deliver that? Most importantly, pay attention. When we're confronting new technology and the idea of more or less personal autonomy, the view that each of us must decide how to act based on his or her own deliberations, inspirations, and experiments to discover the best course of action, has in the past paved the way to crafting original work. Consider Les Paul. Come on. Consider the influence of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which was recorded, produced, monitoring in quad. It was part of the production process. Or Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody was as a production a universe of original thinking. We have a rare opportunity to embrace authenticity. Let me explain. In every musical genre, one finds a young, unestablished artist with underdeveloped technical and musical talent who are able to create original music that captures an audience, and often a new audience and a broad audience. These artists are chasing an authentic interpretation that listeners, hearing something unexpected but somehow familiar enough to resonate, can relate to. It doesn't hurt to immerse yourselves in the best recordings that a given genre has historically offered. For me, when I produced and engineered the second Linda Ronstadt record, mariachi record, Canciones de mi Padre, I was provided with a playlist for which to listen to classic rancheras, corridos, boleros, ballads, sones, huapangas, polkas, although we didn't record a polka. Same for our Afro-Cuban record. You need to search out good examples of the musical genre, and then maybe examples in 5.1 surround, and then some of the emerging immersive music remixes. There are a few good ones out there. I'm not going to talk about them. But here's the thing. You're not copying them. You're inspired by them. You're inspired to do better, not to do the same thing more quickly, not to bill more. You're not going to make any money for a while. We'll come back to that. Oh, by the way, remember to mic the music, not the instrument. I had to slip that in there.
Always good advice.
It's helpful to start an immersive production with musicians and songwriters who are enthusiastic to explore new media, particularly natural musicians, performing as a group with live performances in a good live space. Well, and then there are artists such as Billie Eilish who are able to project authenticity in today's digitally overrepresented, laminated production styles. Not surprisingly, her music works extraordinarily well in multi-channel immersive. But going a step further, what makes recorded music meaningful? How do we reach people? Because sometimes we don't really think about it. What makes recorded music meaningful from the perspective of labels is often only a successful and profitable history. It's clear that traditional labels are not at all interested in investing in our re-education as immersive producers. That's up to us. Those that are providing some kind of budgets to support experiment and development are few and far between. I think it starts with producing meaningful music. Meaningful music, it has a story to tell, a sense of time and place, conveys, think Hotel California, come on. It conveys an artist's innermost feelings and observations about the world and their place in it in ways that touch that audience. It's honest and clear and has a unique personal perspective. It's more meaningful when you write about what you know and what you have experienced. The writing and performances are from a perspective that's real and unguarded, i.e., authentic, honest. Yes, the world might ignore or hate your work. Just fucking get over it and get back to fucking work. You know, you're there to study sound and make it sound better. That's my basic presentation, and if it doesn't piss you off enough, I'm here for more. And chime in with questions, but I want to mention that the cultural opportunities are revealed in listening to Latin American music, because it works very well mixed and immersive. There's no shortcut to bringing authenticity into the production. It helps to start your work with solid cultural context, some kind of context, an abstract context, but a cultural context, a meaning. The richness of the world's cultures are the product of many generations and many influences. Tell that story. And there are so many stories to tell. Most importantly, the writing, arrangements, instrumentation, particularly in the percussion, make for a terrific fun presentation mixing for immersive in Afro-Cuban jazz, where immersive reveals all the power and dimensions and fun and party of the genre. American jazz, on the other hand, is a bit of a challenge. Brett knows how to mix American jazz, but we'll let Brett talk about that. Still, cultures lend a real opportunity to tell a story in immersive mixing. Let's veer off for a second. Here's what I'm set up for. I'm mixing every day for a major American artist. Monitoring. How do we get into this? Well, here's what I've set up in my apartment. I've got 3 computers, including my MacBook Pro. The main computers are a new Mac Pro running Pro Tools, and we have the same workflow for Pyramix. Pyramix has a different link, but I'm going to kind of a central A to D, D to A, Dante, MADI, everything box, which is available as a matrix. MADI into an RME Digiface Dante, because you have to get into a second mix computer if you don't have a new Mac Pro, or to loop back to your primary mix computer if you do have a Mac Pro, have enough power to run both. But there's the very convoluted, very unexpected path to mix. But out of the matrix, I've got enough D-to-A cards where I'm driving a 714 system. The spec is 712, but we're going to mix 714 to give us an opportunity for movement in the high channels. And I take it to Blackbird in Nashville to monitor on their 916 system. You can also monitor on headphones. You can also monitor, if you dare, on the Echo Studio. There's a way to connect the Echo Studio and listen to it while you're mixing.
I have a question. I want to jump in because this is fascinating to me.
Well, that's the end. But
well, there you go.
There you go. So jump right in.
I found it very interesting that you're mixing 714. How does it change when you jump to 9? Do you find that there's a big difference, or is it translating pretty well? Do you feel like you're missing anything when you go from 9 back to 7?
No, and I'll tell you why in a second, but I've got to tell you that 714 is a very natural path from our old 5.1 mixes. I mean, we really learned most of our lessons in 5.1, and I have to admit, I got paid a lot of money for doing some bad mixes, some good mixes, but I learned a lot because we had record label support who sensed a revenue stream that didn't happen, but that's okay. I don't think we feel sorry for record labels, but that's a breakout meeting, as Richard would say. What we do find is that moving to a middle surround, the 9/7, requires additional objects. And I'll get some questions, and that's great. But normally in mixing, to do the height, I have a separate 712 stem and a 004 stem. The 004 stem is just my height channels to have stuff moving around up top. I have other stems to do 714, but my favorites are being able to take a rear channel and deliver a delay into the front and a reverb into the front. Take a front top channel and to delay it into the rear, and do the same in each ring. Now, we don't have a lower ring, but maybe someday we will. But Atmos will be adaptable to that. And Dolby did study the lower ring, which, by the way, we at McGill have studied, and Jack Kelly did a terrific presentation in the lower ring, and found that the research is that it does add to the experience, having speakers near the floor. I'm off topic here.
Well, I think that's interesting, because for mixing...
What was your question, Brett? You had a question? You had a question? Did I answer it?
Yeah. I think that difference between 7 and 9 is an interesting one, because... And
one that I don't always use. Yeah. I don't know. Let me interrupt you. I don't always use. So going from 5 to 7 to these fill-in speakers, which are wide front, I don't always use that because it would take a different stem. And right. I hear enough panning differentiation just to use the 7 bed. That's the real answer. But good. I had to talk. Yeah. I had to talk.
No, that's interesting, because so many immersive systems are very dense in that ear level ring, whether or not they have above, lower, whatever. And so it's interesting to kind of see where that point of maybe diminishing returns is, where you don't necessarily need the channels to be able to fill the space.
But I got to tell you, at the same time, playing back an Atmos product like Billie Eilish or the Beach Boys, or what's the go-to file is always Yellow Brick Road. It's okay. I don't think it's the best, but it's a good mix. Great pennies mix. It's pretty good. But when you get into the big playbacks, listening at Blackbird on a 916 system is an existence-defining moment that we hope others will share, but we don't know. And this reckons back. This reminds us of making records where it sounds magical in the control room, and we hear every detail, and it's big and it's fat, and that's the best we'll ever hear it, because modern life. But I think mixing in immersive is like that we need to mix for the very best experience, and whatever's rendered downstream in whatever format, that's the listener experience, that's the channel, whatever that is, and we'll improve that independently on what we do with the mix.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple questions rolling in. I could ask you a million questions myself, but let's dig in here a little bit. David is asking how well the Echo Studio works for monitoring Atmos, and I'm curious about how it works in general. What's the signal flow, or how do you route that?
I have a problem here because I'm working for Amazon and Sony, and I'd only like to say that the Echo Studio is a garish simulacrum of immersive listening and only vaguely resembles my original mix. And so we have this opportunity to monitor a mix in the perfect room, which is a small rectangular room, the perfect room. Yeah, go figure. while we do our positioning. And so far, I don't have that room, and I have no clue how the Echo Studio works in these other environments, because research was not public research. Is not available on the Echo Studio, although there's a tremendous amount of work and a lot of Fraunhofer development and Sony work, but we didn't get to see it. I mean, we want to see numbers. We're all about data. We want to see the data. What's the spread? And I can only say that like anything else in the record business, you have to follow the money. And the money is working for Amazon right now. So, I mean, take a deep breath and cash the checks.
Yeah.
This is not going to be very popular.
How does the actual interfacing go between, how do you get your mix stream, or are you rendering mixes and then listening back on the Echo, or is it a real time?
Okay, well, first it takes a firmware upgrade, which takes deep knowledge in CLI or command line interface. And you have to update the firmware, and you have to send it the right stream USB, and it has a USB interface. But it's not easy. They do not make it easy, and it's not publicly accessible.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. That's a
next question.
Interesting tool. Yeah.
That's
okay. So, really, right off the top of the event here, Oliver asked. He was hoping that you might discuss a little bit about the difference between working in a format like Auro 3D versus Atmos, and how that changes your approach when you're
That's
mixing.
a really good question, Oliver. That's a great question. And I haven't mixed a product in Auro 3D. I've been listening to Auro 3D since I was invited to Mol, Belgium, 10, 12, 15 years ago, and I've been friends with Wilfred van Balen ever since, as he's developed Auro 3D. And I'd love to support it because it's a music format. And it is for up top, which is why we're mixing. Part of the reason we're mixing in 4 is to be able to repurpose for Auro 3D. I currently have a project, two records to mix for Auro 3D, and I will monitor in an adjusted 514 plus 4. Excuse me,
Okay.
51514 is what I wanted
Okay.
to say.
Yeah. All right. I've got a question via text. Our friend Ian Corbett's watching on the other end with us. And
Hi, Ian.
he's wondering what advice you might have for musical material working well in the height channel. Are there any sources that you go to, or is there, if you go, oh, there's a second rhythm guitar, I'm always going to put that up top. Where do you sort of look for that height material?
In popular music, it's an evolving set of possibilities. And the best I can say is that, going back to classical music, is to look at the work of 2L Records and what he's done with this amazing concept of printing a track per microphone. And this is Morten Lindberg. And he's made some staggeringly good productions in 5 and now in Immersive, in Aural. I'm pretty sure it's in Aural. Morten, you'll forgive me. But
I believe so.
The thing that Morten Lindberg, and the thing that's important to look at, is how carefully he prepares his material and his room and where he puts his mics. Now, I'll repeat, 1 mic per channel in exactly the right place after days or weeks of rehearsal, putting mics in the right place. And his presentations are existence defining. It's the best multi-channel work I have ever heard or could ever hope to hear. And that's classical. And the height is natural. You know, I have a problem with Morton because he puts in for 3, 4, 5 Grammy nominations every year. And so he gets at least 2 or 3 nominations, and people vote in each category. He's nominating against his winning. He should submit one record, and he'll win another Grammy because it's
There's
the best
too much
work.
good stuff.
He does it all. And so that's what I'm emulating, is understanding his sense of space and the authenticity with which he renders the work, the music, and the performance. Did that answer your question? I bet it did.
Yeah,
but thanks.
I think Ian's probably pretty happy with that, but now I have a sort of follow-on. So thinking about that concept of a microphone to speaker direct correlation. We have a microphone, and that signal translates to a reproduction speaker. When you're miking something, obviously the idea of direct versus reverberant sound is a ratio, whereas when you're mixing direct sound that's already been recorded, that ratio has to be kind of contrived via artificial reverb or something. So do you find yourself doing that where you position a source and then you sort of bleed its ambience into the height? Or do you actually position the direct sound?
I mean,
in the height?
I'll be honest with you, Brett. I'm doing more pop mixing. And what I do is I'll take certain sections of the arrangement that need to expand. Say a big chorus comes in. And I'll throw, all depending on the size, I'll throw that chorus up all in the height. And you understand, in pop music, we're mixing from 80, 90, 100, 130, 140 tracks, including stems, including original performances, because I want to take the lead vocal from an original performance and then add the production, the stereo production that these either Manny or Serban has done in the record, because I have to emulate the record. So my hands are tied a little bit. But I can play games in interpreting the lyricism and the sense of the flow of the tune. And I'll just throw things with size up top or in a full top and bottom 4, a quad group, double quad group. And those are all objects. Those are all separate objects. You have to kind of invent it ahead of time and make sure it's part of your work, because it's hard to add in later. But the other thing is, there's always kind of a funny sound in modern music, where there's a little sound that goes, beep, 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 beep. Man, they go upstairs in a minute.
Yeah. That ear candy stuff isn't easy.
That ear candy stuff, because it gets your attention, but not too much, just enough. Same way it would in the stereo mix, where you don't play it up like the labels want you to do. George, listen, we're not hearing enough in the heights. These people are paying real money for those speakers. Can you give us more? That's fucked. And you have to ignore everything the label says in terms of mixing direction. Every single word, including and the. They don't get a voice.
It reminds me of the early surround stuff where it was, I don't know, just put something in the back. They need to know there's a speaker there. It's the same
And
thing,
turn
just
it up.
in another dimension.
And turn it way up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's something else. But I think that idea of you're using it to reinforce the musical effect, which is such a cool experience. You have something that in stereo can only open up so much, and now it's got this whole new dimension that it can spread in, which is
starting in 5.1, it had a whole new dimension in 5.1, and now we have this opportunity in immersive. Hey, Brett, somebody's got to be telling me I'm full of shit out there. So
no one's complaining yet, but we do have a couple more questions here that I want to throw
you know
at
what? They really get to know me. They need to get to know me.
We have a couple of questions regarding more focused on consumer reception and the way we can get this music out to consumers. So the first one came in very early in, and we were talking about this before we started with a couple of the folks on the stream here about the importance of customized HRTFs and how that plays into being able to distribute this material that's being created. So what are your thoughts? I mean, where do you see that heading?
Well, as you know, Matt Borum and a couple of our guys are working on trying to make a bigger playback experience as an app. And, these guys, our PhDs are working on it. Brett, maybe you should come back and lend a hand. But part of what we're not doing as a research institution is really gauging the channel, gauging the connection with the world. That's not what we do. We research possibilities and publish them. But for any of us who are mixers, Richard and I, who are trying to reach out and get it right, we have to pay attention to the fact that there are very few home Dolby systems, 712 systems. There are very few. Andres Mayo says it's 1/100th, and that's not hopeful. The Echo Studio, for whatever it brings, is a hint at what another dimension might sound like. It's like watching the 50s show Twilight Zone through a 90% neutral density filter. It's just a hint of what it might be, the future might be. It's not there yet. And at the same time, it takes this massive investment in research and delivery to make the next step work. What's the next step? Well, it really should be higher resolution, because Dolby is kind of locked in to a stream that's they consider high resolution, but they considered any number of their formats high resolution that were egregiously awful, just awful.
Is Atmos like natively?
Well, Atmos doesn't have a native so much as delivery format. Natively, we can produce in 96 or 48. We can't do it in 44.1. Do not accept work in 44.1 because Atmos doesn't, the renderer doesn't accept it. But you have these, I mean, I've got an HD2 system, and at 48K, I'm full with 160 tracks on one of these tunes with effects, because I have to have all of the original works and the stems from the stereo producers. And they're huge sessions and tough to manage. You really have to have an approach, a protocol to handling large sessions, or you just get lost and you get nothing done. Going back to the delivery, guys, the biggest consumer of surround is sports, at those peak times, is experiencing soccer in the big moments where the crowd sound is huge, and we've learned how to get rid of the vuvuzela. What's the name of that thing?
Vuvuzela, yep.
We figured out how to do that. Those guys got paid a lot of money because they work quick. Speaking of which, if you want to make money, you don't want to do immersive mixing. Immersive mixing is for the joy and personal satisfaction. If you want to make money, develop software, build an app. Don't pretend that you can make money mixing, because you can't. And by the way, going a step farther, you're not going to make any money producing music either, because there's no channel to give producers money unless you're the top 0.0016% of producers who have the edge on YouTube. And that's real money. YouTube is real money, but boy, it sucks. My God, does it suck. It sucks. I can't say that anymore, can I?
Well, maybe you're once. On it, so.
Okay, I can say once. It sucks. The audio on YouTube sucks moose cock. Here's what I mean by that. It's horrible, and the people that are promoting it or enabling it are unrelentingly deaf. Moosecock. YouTube audio is moosecock, and yet that's the world's first or second biggest music distribution. And it's horrible and not getting any better because they don't fucking care. They don't care. And they won't care because a 2 million or 3 million person audience is nothing to them. A 1 billion or 2 billion person audience, maybe a little bit. They don't care.
Yeah.
And it's
a different
insane.
scale than we're used to dealing with for music, that's for sure. Our audience doesn't rate. I want to go back to something that you've sort of mentioned a couple of times, focused on the mixing side. It sounds to me, first of all, that you're mostly dealing with projects that have already been released in a more traditional format of some sort. So how... You said you were sort of faithful to the original mix because there's some expectation that everyone approved it. That's what the consumer expects. How faithful do you really have to be? I mean, how experimental do you feel you can get before
Boy,
it's
that's
too
a
much?
great question, Brett. Great question. Here's what I do is I have to recreate their original stereo mix in stereo. Now that's tough because Manny Moroccan, still hits the bus hard and has any number of analog devices that he would put in, and he doesn't document them because, he doesn't care. Serban Gaina is much better at documenting what he does and really printing stems to work from. But you have to recreate what the artist's intent was in improving that mix. Now that's remixing. Now I have a whole nother workflow and methodology for doing original work where it's coming out of my dreams of a better space and a better presentation and recording it for 714. But going back to what makes money, or what might make money, or might reach an audience, it's to get, as Nico Bolas has pointed out, and we all need to listen to it, when you listen in this new format, it's gotta have the groove. You gotta hear the groove. So you gotta know what that groove is. You gotta know, and maybe it's just bass, kick, and that stem, and I have a separate way of treating that stem, the 714 stem, actually the 712 stem at that point, with separate dynamics. That's the other question you're gonna ask, if you haven't asked it yet, is what do you do with mastering on this format? We'll take some time on that. But right now, I need to, in the room, switch between a stereo of that mix in my monitor section and the 714 or 916 presentation, and it's gotta be the same groove. It's gotta have the groove. If it doesn't groove, if it loses the groove, you can go home. Go home. Go into investment banking. No, there's not much money there. Go into real estate. No, that's fucked too. Chartered accountancy. Go somewhere else. But if it doesn't groove, if you don't know what a groove is in stereo, you won't know what a groove is in immersive. And many of you do. And I just need to tell you that you need to be honest to that little voice on your shoulder that says, George, that doesn't groove. That sucks. No, we're out of time. Cookie called and you're due home for dinner. Go home. No, don't go home. Try again. The kick sucks. Do it again from scratch. So that thing where you have to really listen and tell yourself the truth about what you're hearing, that matters again. Because we lost them in 5.1 remixes, and we're going to lose them again in immersive remixes if we don't get it right.
So when you're switching back and forth and you're sort of trying to recreate that stereo mix, how are you, this is more of just a studio setup question, how are you dealing with level imbalances? Because I'm assuming for the most part, you've got a whole bunch more speakers, you're going to be louder. So are you just loudness balancing?
Trimming speakers, trimming objects, trimming, until in that sweet spot, it could only happen in the sweet spot. In that sweet spot, it sounds the same. So Nico is remixing Neil Young. And Neil's direction to Nico is, I want to sit in the center. I want to be able to hear instruments. But when I walk out of the center, I want to hear mono. It's like a Zen exercise. I don't know what we're going to do or what Nico's going to do, but it's got me thinking.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple other questions that are popping up here, and one of them that I'm fascinated by, so I'm going to jump to it. From Ray Guns for Ronnie, how can the listener experience for Atmos or for any of these immersive systems be scaled up for live reproduction?
Jesus, what a great question.
Yeah.
What a great question. I'm embarrassed to admit I haven't thought about it at all. And I will. That's a great question. Well, we know that in live performance with Pink Floyd, they hauled that quad system around. And it did capture audiences, but man, it was hard to set up. And took a lot of time to get it right and to calibrate it. I can't imagine that. You mean live, like big audiences, like an arena?
Yeah,
I hate arenas. I hate arenas. But I guess somebody's going to do it, and it'll be a development. So as you know, the Love Show in Las Vegas was what was the guy's name? Our graduate, Gavin Whiteley, did the Love Show. Gavin Whiteley did the Love Show at the Mirage, which was a 23-channel LCRS matrix system, and we helped talk him through it. I mean, I feel like at some point that week that they called him to, Roy gets bit by the tiger, the Mirage. It's a casino. It's all about money. And they said, well, what are we going to put in there, boys? And so the Love Show came to mind. And Gavin got the gig by literally saying, in answer to the question, anybody know anything about surround? And we teach, and you've heard this, Brett, we teach always say yes. Because invariably somebody's asking you the wrong question. Do you know how to do surround? That's the wrong question. The right question is, do you understand that you have to research the tools and come up with a concept for us by Friday for surround? That's the right question. So that's the question you answer. So you have to ask yourself, what's the right question if somebody's interviewing you to do one of these gigs? And you always say yes. If you don't say yes, you're just grabbing your ankles. You have to say yes. So that's what he did. Kevin Whiteley said yes, did this brilliant system, and even though one of the Martins was not very helpful, the other Martin was, George. And it was a brilliant show. Now, the other Martin got to redo the show, and I went to Las Vegas with Kyle Lenning and Bill Schnee, who you all know, 2 years ago to hear the revamped Love Show, and it was not the same thing. It was all about loud, and it wasn't a great show. So too bad. So anyway, for big presentation, although I haven't done it myself, and I don't have independent ideas, the question is good and valid, and maybe you should do it.
I think it's interesting because I know, obviously, sound reinforcement isn't really my home or my passion, but there were acts that were starting to employ Atmos in large systems, and I just can't imagine the logistics of, like
I didn't
you said,
know that.
calibrating.
Can
I
you,
want to say,
Brett, let me interrupt. Name one act because I want to look up something.
I don't know any acts. I want to say I read something about Clare Brothers starting to tour with an Atmos system of some sort. So I'm not sure who exactly they were using.
Because that's
with,
McBride, and I could ask McBride what's going on with Roy.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a fantastic question, but
well, except this year.
Yeah. Well, speaking of this year, there's another good question that's sort of more related to our present times where we don't have these large audiences. How do you think that MPEG-H and developments in sort of television standards are going to push immersive? Because now we're starting to see immersive audio included as part of larger broadcast and video standards. Do you think that's going to help our case for immersive?
Well, our case for immersive, from our perspective as mixers, will be purely on whether we stumble across that artist and a mix that captures a public's imagination, where, it's so good that, you're driving in your car listening to radio and you pull over the side of the road and take an illegal U-turn to get to a record store to buy a record. It's so good. And that thing that makes music compelling, I don't think that's changed. You hear something and it touches something deeply inside of you and says, I have to hear that again. I have to be part of that. What the fuck is that? And I've heard that mix, but they won't release it. It's the one of the Billie Eilish mixes, and Billie Eilish and her brother have decided they want to remix immersive on their own. And this great mix that David Leonard did, staggeringly good, brilliant, a universe of sounds and of story. And nobody will ever hear it. And that's cool and not cool.
Somebody just popped in the chat and actually said that Santana is doing his set in Las Vegas with an Atmos system, which is very interesting and encouraging.
Well, the question is, what is an Atmos system? I mean, maybe it's just a multi-channel system where things are panned out and they're using Atmos to suck the gamblers in away from the craps tables.
Or is it pre-programmed and sequenced down to the second with backing tracks and whatnot, where you can actually manipulate objects reliably, consistently every night, which is then a different thing.
That'd be Carlos Santana. Yeah, predictable.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It makes me want to go to Vegas and check it out.
Well, there are other reasons to go to Vegas. I mean, there's some really great hamburgers in Vegas.
Somebody also popped in and asked if you have any experience with the immersive automotive experience, the various products from, they specifically mentioned Ambio, which is Sennheiser's system, and I believe Bang & Olufsen has a system of some sort, and a couple others.
Well, and B&O is Harman now, and that's all of our graduates. That's John Hong and all the guys that have been doing that for years. So we have that connection to hear about what they're doing privately before it's published. But I don't have a Tesla yet. And when I do have a Tesla, I wanted to have a damn good immersive system. But no, not yet. I advised those guys. I helped Elliot and the Panasonic guys out with the L's system in the Acura. And it's interesting, the discussion of how to implement it, because invariably car audio gets, how to put this delicately, hind tit all the way at the back. Everything about it is what's left over. Scraps on the cutting room floor, space in the dashboard, the electrical connection to the speakers, the limited purchasing timeline where you have to know what you're going to buy 7 years ahead of when it's delivered just in time to manufacturing. Maybe it's down to 5 years. Whatever it is, it's incredibly hard to do cars. And yet, that's a great environment. It's a captive environment. but it requires very special processing. And this, I suggest, is a different channel for loudness, because the car has dramatically different loudness constraints in terms of road noise and different vehicles and what have you. And that has been a different channel up until now, where you have, in mastering, you have your vinyl channel, if you're lucky. You have your high-res digital channel, if you're really lucky. And then you have your CD master, which is a little bit more crushed. MP3s are a little bit more crushed. And then automotive, where you actually try to do dynamics a little bit better if you can capture an automotive stream. It's just, and we can't get, as far as I know, our team, our graduates aren't working on really good adaptive control. I mean, they have adaptive control. They always have. But it's not good. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Not in my car.
Mine either. I think it is an interesting frontier, if you will, though, because thinking about the modern consumer, for a lot of people, that might be the only place they have actual loudspeakers these days. So many people, even at home, are listening on earbuds or headphones off a laptop.
Or sound bars.
Or sound bars. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, somebody mentioned somewhere up in the chat, I sort of lost track of it, but they mentioned sound bars specifically as a delivery channel, and that's a tough sell coming from one spot, trying to reproduce anything immersive, and a lot of times that's similar to car audio in that they say, okay, you have the 3 inches under the TV to fit the thing, and you're sort of working with all these constraints that just don't deliver.
Here's the answer. Here's the answer as far as we can, our perception as producers and mixers has to be to make the best sounding product of the moment. That has to be what we do. Now, if we monitor that on an Echo Studio or on a sound bar in the other room in the lounge, whatever we monitor on, maybe we'll hear something that feels like it might be a mistake, but we don't necessarily have to correct it unless it's a dramatic mistake. For instance, in 5.1, Elliott, for this one very famous group, put the lead vocal in the center of a 5.1 remix. And unfortunately, listeners would solo that lead channel and hear the artist, saying whatever he was going to say under his breath. And it got back to the artist, and that was the end of the independent artist in the 5.1 channel. Also, I heard a Fleetwood Mac thing that Elliott had remixed in a car, and they had folded, a designer who shouldn't be mentioned, had folded the center into the back channels out of phase, hyped. And there's this other expression that I used to use, but I can't use anymore, but it's something in reverse. It was a something in reverse.
Yeah, not great. Not great at all.
Horrible.
Well, I have one final question, unless somebody pops up and beats me in the chat here. And that's something you touched upon very briefly, which is the difference between recording in immersive and mixing in immersive. And I feel like, with the exception of people like Morten Lindberg and some of the stuff that Sennheiser does with their Tone Meisters, there's not a lot of actual recording in immersive. There's a lot more remixing at this point.
Well, I think that's going to change. There was a Snarky Puppy record that we reviewed 3 years ago in immersive, in what was called the Surround Committee, and it was fucking great. And you knew these guys were thinking of space. You knew they were thinking of space. I'd like to hear Bon Iver. I'd like to hear Jordan do something in immersive as part of his writing. But that's what made Dark Side of the Moon so great, was imagining the space in the writing and arrangement. And we're waiting for that. I think it's going to I think Snarky Puppy was a glance in the right direction. And I think that the modern laminated, layered production can adapt to that if you're paying attention. But you have to pay attention. And if it doesn't work, You have to do it again. And if it still doesn't work, do it again. And if you have to book another day in the studio, do it again. And that's the thing that made pop not refined, but great. It made it great. Was getting it right and not quitting until you had it right, until you had something that really connected, that wasn't bullshit.
Yeah. I hadn't heard about the Snarky Puppy album, and that's exciting. It makes me want to start putting up height channels every time I hit record, because maybe that's the other way to get people excited about this is, if you get enough artists who become committed to it and feel like it's a worthy pursuit.
As you work your way through a record, somebody says for a synth overdub, hey, what happens if we hear it from up top, or whatever that is, and then you listen to it, and it either works or it doesn't. But it's part of the development, part of the artistic development.
It's exciting. I know we have at least one university class, immersive audio class, tuning in tonight. Specifically, they're all working on Atmos production right now and immersive audio.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
I wish I'd known. I would have recalibrated my pitch.
I'm sorry, I should have told you later. I got a text message after we started that we had a whole crew in, so it's very exciting.
There you go.
Well, I think this has been an absolutely awesome overview and history and everything going on in immersive right now, and I'm more excited about it than I was an hour ago. So,
well, speaking of which, how many people are still signed on?
Oh, let me see if I can check out.
We've got 92, 93 right now.
Yeah, so we lost
Right
50. We lost 50. That's about right. Okay. Just checking.
Hey, immersive's not for everybody. It takes a special refined sense.
It's not for everybody. Brett, thank you so much. AJ, thank you so much. Nate, really appreciate it. You guys do a great job. I love this. And AJ, I love the production. This is really great. Thank you. I've learned a lot.
Thank you for joining us. This was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Yes,
so,
thanks.
Brett.
I echo Brett's comments there. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead, George.
Zoom Teenies next week.
Yes.
Okay?
We'll talk soon.
Cool, guys. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
See everybody
Thanks,
soon.
George,
Cheers.
for joining us. That was awesome. Great presentation. Ton of good comments there and questions in the chat room. So go ahead and feel free to email us at centralindianaaes@gmail.com. Any other questions? We could try to get those answered. Also, be sure to check out our website, centralindianaaes.org. You'll see a report and write-up on this, as well as a link to the posting of whenever we get this video posted, which we're hoping will be tonight. You can also find that here on our YouTube channel, so make sure you hit subscribe. Also, hit the like button. Hitting subscribe, you'll get notified of all these other webinars that we do in the future. And speaking of that, we have another one coming up October 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Careers in Audio, What's Your Connection? And that's going to be pretty much an industry career panel focused towards students. So it's going to be, we've got a lot of great panelists. We'll be announcing those panelists soon, but about 4 or 5 different panelists on that program, and it's going to be a great time. So I urge you to check out our website, centralindianaaes.org. You can get all that information there. That link is also below in the description. What else do I have? We'll be sending out a post-event survey tonight to all the registered participants. If you guys could please fill that out. It's very quick. It'll take you less than a minute, but it helps us kind of do these types of webinars, do these types of programs, kind of see what you guys are wanting us to put out. So great to have that feedback from you. So please do that when that arrives in your email. Other than that, thanks again. Brett, excellent job. George, thank you. AJ, thanks for hosting us tonight and helping us with our stream. That's Force Tech Solutions. So thank you, AJ, and we'll see you next time.